This podcast is brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine for those that love to make and drink great beer. Learn more online or subscribe at beerandbrewing.com or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew.
Hi everybody, it's John Hall, Senior Editor of Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine. We're in Nashville. It's the Craft Brewers Conference. It's the annual gathering of brewers from around the world and around the country who come to learn about beer, to partake in seminars, to shop the expo floor for everything from wastewater treatment systems to keg lines. And it's a chance for brewers to actually kind of come together and share beers and talk about it. And I'm really fortunate because my guest today is Rodenbach's brewmaster, Rudi Ghequire. Ghequire.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm terrible with, I could spell it probably if I needed to, but not necessarily with pronouncing it. And
yeah.
You've been Rodenbach's brewmaster, you've been with the company for 33 years now.
36.
36 now. All right, well, we got to talk to your PR folks about getting an updated, updated bio. But Rodenbach is one of the world's most celebrated breweries, I think, and it's captured the imagination of so many folks before they've even fully embraced what beer is. Rodenbach has this sort of wonderful romanticism to it, and especially for brewers in the U.S. who have embraced sour beer and wild beer, they get very excited just at the mere mention of Rodenbach. And the beer that we have in front of us is Alexander.
Yeah.
Can we start off by just talking about this beer a little bit?
Yeah, we can, but Alexander is one of our brands that is not an original brand, because the original brand is the classical Rodenbach. And I prefer to start our talk about that beer.
Please.
Because the classical Rodenbach is an exemplary style for a style that was between the spontaneous fermentation and top and bottom fermentation. It was a way to preserve beer before people used hops. And this is, I think, one of the most important things for our brands and our brewery. And everyone falls in love with the wood, but the wood is not directly the thing who gives the taste to the product, but who keeps the culture inside.
Okay. What date are we talking about? How far back does this beer go?
This style of beer goes back to the early Middle Ages. I think it's a style that was used before the year 1000. We drink now 10,000 years beer. But we only use 1,000 years hops. So that is only 10% of the whole story of beer making. And if you go to the Andes, where they make chicha beer, they don't use bitter flavors. If you go to Africa, they don't use hops. So also in our area, where people started with beer making, they use only herbs and spices to mask the off flavors, and hops were not included. We only have to learn working with hops to preserve our beer, because people always have had a problem with acidity. Mm-hmm. Acidity is acceptable, certainly when you are young, but it goes down when you grow up. And therefore it was to figure it out which level of sourness people can accept it.
And so, how do you feel, have palates shifted? I know we can talk about 10,000 years of beer, but in the last 40 or so, as the global beer culture has changed, has the beer that you've been making, that your brewery has been making, has it had to change?
No, it is not changed. It is still in its original way. It's a way you make your wort. You do a primary fermentation with purified mixed yeast culture, and then you have a young beer, and then you go with a part of that young beer on wood, and then it becomes an acidification, a maturation, and then you blend a part of that old beer together with young beer to reduce the pH back to 3.5. Mm-hmm. And 3.5 is a very important pH, not only in beer but also in wine. And on 3.5 you can preserve your beer by acidity, but on an acceptable level. This is important. If you look to the winemaking, young people love or fall in love and drinks Sauvignon Blanc wines, who are more malic wines, who taste a little bit more sour. Older people will taste Chardonnay wines because there you will have the malolactic fermentation, and that happens also on 3.5. That's the reason why our style of beer, our type of beer, is close into wine. And if I describe our beer, then I will say, okay, this is the missing link between beer and wine. You have the refreshing of beer and the complexity of wine. And for the rest, so we are sitting here in front with an Alexander in front of us. Well, Alexander is an exemplary style of our beers, but masked with fruit. And fruit was always used in this style of beer to mask all flavors or to give more flavor to the product.
And so, with Alexander, and so it's sour cherries is the fruit that's used. Is there historical records? Is there a reason as to why cherries?
Why cherries? Because cherries were growing in the wild, and people could catch them and collected them and put them in the beer. And so the sugars of the sour cherries was also fermented together with the beer.
Yeah.
That is also what they are doing in lambic. They make a Kriek lambic. This is you can mask some flavors with herbs and spices and hops, or one of them. You can mask that with fruit, like in the cherry beers and fruit beers. You can mask also with wood. What happens now? People store the beer in wood for having a wood flavor, and that is how you can mask your beers and bring them in a higher level of flavors.
You mentioned earlier that people talk about the wood quite a bit, and obviously your brewery has one of the largest wood programs in the world.
That's right.
And are we paying too much attention as beer consumers to the vessel itself and not to the process? You seem to sort of intimate that wood's important, but for holding and for preserving a little bit. But there seemed to be like maybe we're paying too much attention to that, or maybe I was just reading into what you were saying.
No, okay. Why we are using the wooden vats? Because the reason why we have this wooden vats is to keep the culture. It's a culture of wild yeast who is at the inner side of the vats. And we are doing a positive selection since more than 200 years. What will that say? Every time we start up a new vat, or a renewed vat, or a restored vat, then we look for the best culture we have. And we inoculate that vat with the best culture we have. So we go every time further and further. Let me say, if you make an IPA, maybe the first time it's too bitter, or less bitter, or not bitter enough, or maybe you have some problems with yeast or whatever. But after 5-6 cycles, normally you must can make a good IPA. With sour beers, and certainly in our style, that's more difficult because you have to wait 2 years. So normally, after 3 months, at least 6 months, you must can make a very good top fermented, bottom fermented beer. In our fall, I think you need 10-12 years. So we need much more time for optimize our beers. And I think if you are busy with that during 200 years, then you have to know what you have to do.
When you visit other breweries, when you talk to other brewers where they're turning beers around in 2 weeks or a month, or and you're talking years, decades longer, and with a brewery of your history, with a brewery where time is really the key, right? To the
not only time, but you need time to make it as it is and as good as possible.
But we live in this sort of instant society right now where you can pick up your phone and call a car that'll show right up, or you can order food online, and you can, everything is sort of this immediate. You can go to Amazon and buy a book, and it can be at your house within hours. The concept of time in beer, it's almost quaint in some ways, but it is still so necessary. And do you ever stop to sort of to consider the brewery's role in time and maturation in a world where everything is just so busy around it all the time?
Not directly, because at one time people want to do it all very quick, but at the other time they want to chill. They want to have rest, and that is what we can give in our beer. So we do that for them.
But what about for you? You get to travel the world. Have you dipped in and made an IPA with anybody recently, or a quick kettle sour or anything like that?
Yeah, I've tasted a lot. I was judged on the World Beer Cup, so I'm thankful that I was invited. So I have had a chance to taste how much? 18 sessions, so that's quite nice.
But do you get into brew houses and do?
Yeah.
Okay, and you're making some of these styles as well. So do you find when you're visiting breweries, you're making, some of these fun beers or some beers that are not necessarily in your wheelhouse?
Mm-hmm.
Do you find what's that experience for you to visit a brewery and to make an IPA
It's always interesting to visit another brewery, to see how brewers are doing, how they are smart to look for some solutions. So you can learn everywhere something. So and I'm personally very interested in breweries and in beer. I've tasted a lot of good beers. I've tasted a lot of beers that maybe can be better, but who I am, I'm an individual. So if other people find it a good beer, they have the right.
As a brewery steeped in tradition and as the brewmaster of that brewery, we've seen so much innovation. We've seen here at the Craft Brewers Conference, you can walk the floor and you can see the latest technologies. You can see ways of improving brewhouse efficiency and all of that. Are there ways that Rodenbach has adapted in the modern age, or are there things that you would like to see?
What I'm personally very interested in, even more sustainability. We are a very sustainable brewery because our vats, we use them more than 100 years.
Right.
So which product you can say, you can think that can be used more than 100 years. So this is really, really sustainable. But even then, I'm also interested in those things who can make us even more sustainable, using less energy, and all these things. I'm very interested in it.
But without changing the flavor of the beer, without changing the recipes, without changing the essence of the brewery.
Yeah, that's right, because I came in '82, and that was the first thing they said, Rudi, you never may change our recipes. This is the key of our product, this is the key of our brewery, don't damage it. And that is why I will stay.
But that was the mandate of make the beer, but don't change the beer.
Make the beer as it is, even better. We can always do better. And I'm sure also we can do even better, because oxygen is an enemy of beer. So if you can do your production with less oxygen, because we are in an oxidative, we work in oxidative circumstances, working in a vat, but if you can reduce the oxidation, then it is even better.
Has that so since '82, since you joined the company, how do you feel the beer has improved? How do you feel that
the
your
beer
tenure
is becoming better?
But how do you quantify better?
What is better? Let me say in '82 we had 2 filling lines, 1 filling line atmospheric, 1 filling line single vacuum filler. Then we have changed into double vacuum filler. Now all our beers are filled in double vacuum fillers. Also our keg line, that was only 1 rinsing step. Now it is a double rinsing step. So we try to do even better thanks to the technology of today. And that's the reason why I'm very interested to be here, to look for the newest technology. Let me say the best available technology of today.
And that's so. where would you like to see the brewery go to continue to improve? Like what would be the next step? Like how can technology actually help?
Yeah.
This wonderful established brewery.
This is step by step. I cannot say. I see a lot of light at the horizon, so I'm hopeful. And every time I'm coming to such an exhibition, I will find new things, interesting things that can help us. Wastewater treatment, whatever.
I'd like to switch gears just a little bit and start talking about the brewing process. How many brew days a year are you doing?
Depending of how many brews we make a day.
Yeah.
So, but that's difficult to say. I think 150.
150.
Yeah.
Okay.
We can do more. We can do more, but therefore you need to market.
So, for the beers that you make, though, is there, like, how do you approach a typical brew day? Is it just mashing in like you would at any other brewery, or is it different because it's?
No, it's a mashing in process.
Yeah.
We use some unmalted grains and so on. So it's a classical system that we use no more than 100 years. Mm-hmm. So nothing has changed. We have new machinery, that's right, but the process
hasn't changed.
Hasn't changed, no.
Going back to the wood then, what sort of considerations when you have 100-year-old foeders, when you have aged wood that has just so much life and so much growth and so much essence to it, what goes into maintaining?
Okay, we still have our own cooperage,
mm-hmm.
and that is the reason why our brewery survived in making this style and type of beer, because of the own cooperage. And we still have today 2 coopers who are mm-hmm. daily working on the maintenance of the foeders.
But and that's obviously a special skill, though, for aged wood like that. I mean, there's certain things that they have to sort of look at.
Well,
there's certain things that
they can make new vats. They have made last year a new vat, but they can also maintain the vats. They can. They have to clean them up at the outer side. They have to clean them up at the inner side. There is always something to do at the vats.
When they're creating new ones,
mm-hmm.
what are they looking for wood-wise? Like, what are they looking for?
They look for wood with the highest density they can find in the market. So that will say continental growth oak, winter oak.
Sure.
So they will find it in France. And we are looking for the big trees so that we can make a lot of staves from one plank.
Right. And so, and how often are they building?
As less as possible.
Okay.
Because it's expensive.
But it's there's no other way of doing it, right? There's no stainless. You're not doing any, or are you doing stainless aging?
The primary fermentation happens in stainless steel cylinder conical vessels. Yes.
Okay.
But then we go with the beer at the end of the primary fermentation, and after a very short lagering for yeast decantation, then we go with the beer with as less yeast cells as possible on the wood, but not mechanical removed. So it's a natural process, and we fill the several vats at once. So and once the beer is in the vat is completely closed, and then we have to wait. And after 2 years, we have a good, incredible good beer.
You say incredible beer, and it certainly is. And I talk to brewers, and Alexander comes up quite a bit. Michael Jackson, the great writer, once called the Grand Cru the most refreshing beer in the world. Mm-hmm. The brewery has cemented its spot in like the Parthenon of beer in the world. Mm-hmm. Where do you see Rodenbach's role in the future when it comes to beer? Because you were and still are sort of this beacon and the shining light for so many brewers, and a brass ring that people would try to mm-hmm. achieve. Brandon Jones were here at Yazoo. Once said that he tried to make an Alexander clone, and it worked out fairly well for him because he won at the Great American Beer Festival. And brewers have continuously sought to mimic the beers. As we here in the U.S. have 6,700 breweries. As global brewing phenomenons continue to, or brewing markets continue to grow, how does Rodenbach continue to grow, to inspire, to stay relevant? Are there? I know you put out a beer in cans not too long ago, Foutage. You are coming out with new beers, maybe not as much as some other breweries. How do you stay relevant, I guess, in this day and age?
The role that I see for Rodenbach is to give reference to that market, because a lot of people will make sour beers, but most of the sour beers were only kettle sour beers. And in kettle sour beers, you don't have the complexity that you have in wood-aged beers. So we have both. We have a lactic acid, and we have also a little bit acetic acid. So making a sour beer is looking for balance. And to be honest, I don't find always a very good balance in the beers. And why is it everyone looking to Rodenbach? Because they will find maybe more balance in our beers. I think that's the reason why Rodenbach stays relevant and will stay relevant also in the future. Because too much modern brewers try to make a sour beer in 3 months, while you need at least 2 years. Why do they do that? To earn money? Maybe.
I mean, certainly they are to make money, and they don't have the benefit of a long history or long lead times. But so you're suggesting though that some of these brewers, should they just take a step back and?
I will not say that they have to do a step back. Who I am to say that, but if you compare the beers very honestly, blind, then you will discover that some beers are really quick made. And okay, it's up to them. And at the end, it will be the consumer who will be the final judge. We were here with 300 judges.
Yeah.
We could taste in front of what consumers will taste. But at the end, if the consumer don't like it, they will not buy it.
When you talk about balance, how do you? Can you go deeper into what a beer, like what you make, what balance means in that context?
Okay. This is a nice question. Thank you for that. Balance, at my opinion, and who I am, but at my opinion, must be not only in the taste, so there must be a balance in the taste, just like you taste wines. In wines you taste the tannins, the sweetness, who is coming from the alcohol, the glycerol, and the unfermented sugars, and also the acidity. So this is balance in the taste. There must be also balance in the nose. When you have a very sharp flavor, who will mask all the other flavors, then, at my opinion, there is no balance in the flavor. And then there must be also a balance between the flavor and the taste. Let me talk about a completely other style. Mm-hmm. If you drink a double IPA or maybe a triple IPA without hopping at the end, not even dry hopping, you will be shocked, because you will have a bitterness in your mouth that you didn't expect. Let me say, this is nearly the same. If you drink a Berliner Weisse but only with lactic sour, and very highly lactic sour, you smell a wheat beer or a Weizen beer, and then you drink a very, very sour beer. This is shocking. And at my opinion, then you miss the balance between the nose and the taste. And I think it's very important. If I will drink an IPA, I like to have some hoppy flavors, even some dry hopping flavors in the nose. So I'm aware that there will be bitterness, or there can be bitterness. And what I see now, and this is now a new experience, in some beers there is so much hoppiness that I found not the bitterness back. So there is not enough bitterness and maybe too much hoppiness. So also there, I think they have to find their balance. But it's up to the brewer. And at the end, the judge will be the consumer will be the judge.
But And I understand what you're saying, but I also know that there are people who line up for sour beers that have been 2 months in a tank, wherever, and people seem to kind of go nuts for it in some ways. And there is this sort of embrace for they're excited for some of these beers, and I wonder if everybody took a step back and had a beer that had been aged for 2 years or aged the right way, if the perception would change, as well.
But aging for 2 years, I will be clear about that. Is it necessary? It depends of the content of your vat. If you have a big vat, you need more time because the maturation speed depends of the volume over the inner side surface. In the past, all beer and wines were maturated in big vats. And why big vats? Because people can go inside and can clean up the vat at the inner side. What I see by using used wine vats, or you cannot go inside, you cannot clean it. So they will be used after several times. In my opinion, this is a waste of material. This is not sustainable, using small vats. Using a big vat is much more sustainable. But if you use a big vat, then you have bigger staves. And then you need more time. I think that the small vats that they used in wines at the origin were only used for the transport of the wines. And if the wines were a little bit infected with Brettanomyces, the wood flavor could mask that. And now everyone is aging wine in small vats. And they only can use them 3 up to 5 times. And then they are completely saturated at the inner side with the polyphenols of the tannins and the anthocyanins of the red coloration. And then you have oxalated crystals at the inner side. Brewers are using that for aging their beers. Most of all, they added some wood chips to have wood flavor inside. I have seen it.
Yes.
They can do that. They can do that. There's not a problem. But why they are doing that? You can also give a wood flavor to a beer in a stainless steel tank. Therefore, you don't need a small used wine vat.
So the larger tank. So even if it is stainless, if you wanted to have some of that wood flavor, but you're saying bigger is.
It's more sustainable.
Yes.
It's much more sustainable because the yield of the wood, if you make wine vats, is only 30% from the fresh wooden trees. If you compare that with the big vats, there you have a yield of around 50%. First, you can use them 100 years. Look what happens by the lambic brewers. They are using their vats also quite a long time.
Yes.
But here, with the small vats, also the staves are very, very small, very thin. And you risk to have problems with that.
That seems to be a tough sell, though, for a lot of small brewers.
Yes and no, but what I'm seeing now is that brewers who are very, very busy with aging of beer on woods are going into the foeders and are going into big contents. And that is what I like to see. This is how we have to do it, at my opinion.
Because it bodes well for the style of beer, for the beer making going forward?
Yeah, because if you will make mixed fermentation, depending of the style and type of beer you will make. Normally lambic beers, you have to mature them in laying vats. Mixed fermentation, you have to mature them in standing up vats.
So, where would you like to see? Because certainly your brewery has been doing this for such a long time, and other brewers in Belgium have been doing this for a long time. Here in the U.S., it is still very, very new. And if you have the opportunity to, you keep saying, who are you to say? But as the brewmaster of Rodenbach, if you could offer advice to young brewers, new brewers, small brewers who are entering into a sour program or entering into a wild program, a wood program.
Yep.
What is one or two pieces of advice that might even just seem very simple or blatant, but that maybe they haven't heard?
I think it's even more difficult to make a sour beer than a bitter beer.
Okay.
First, if you make a sour beer, take your time. Do it well and make a good beer. I think a lot of accidental infected beers came in the market as a sour beer. This is now how you have to do it. If you will make a sour beer, then you have to start. If you brew your wort and you have your primary fermentation, then you have to look how the beer has to taste at the end in a sour way. If I taste some sour beers with dry hopping notes in it, this is not normal. This is not, bitterness and sourness doesn't go together. I'm very surprised to taste that, but I've tasted it. And that's the reason why I think maybe this is an accidental infection and they try to sell it. But in my opinion, this is not good for the sour beer business, because people are a little bit, how can I explain that? They don't know how a sour beer has to taste, because one time they taste bitterness and hoppiness in an IPA and then in a sour beer, what it has to be.
Yeah. And so
They're a little bit disturbed. Is that the right word?
Yeah, I think so. So
Disoriented.
So what should they be doing? How do they address this from your perspective as brewmaster?
Make a study make a study about sour beers, how sour beers has to taste good sour beers, and try to do it better. I have no problem if they do it better than I do. The only thing I can say, I do it as we have done it more than 200 years, and I try to understand why we are doing this.
It sort of comes back to that theme of time, of actually sitting and considering and thinking and tasting and trying to improve. And is that a fair assessment of just
That's right.
being a little bit more slow, being a little bit more deliberate?
I think we are in a movement of slow food. And at the same time, I see people will make beer in 2-3 months. They will make every month a new beer.
Mm-hmm.
Not even the consumer can follow the speed of bringing all these new beers on the market.
Yeah.
On the market, I think I have the idea there is too much stress and competition to bring new beers on the market. I think do it slower and do it good and even more better.
Do you feel that pressure at all of trying to bring new beers to market?
No. We only bring beer on the market if we think it is on his optimum point.
And that could be years between.
Yeah. And once we have found a solution to make a good beer like vintage, we bring it every year again.
Yeah.
And if I come to the States and say, "Oh, Rudi, what's new? Do you have a new beer?" Every year I bring a new vintage. A new vintage and a new Caractère Rouge. That's a new beer.
Right.
Well, the brand name, okay. What about the brand? It's another year. But the concept is the same.
It's just such an interesting way. It's a different perspective of thinking about the beer, where people are so teed up on what is new, what is exciting.
Yeah. Even doing better is also new.
I think that's an excellent standpoint.
Let us be quiet. Let us be relaxed. Let us make good beer and enjoy a good beer.
As we start to ramp up, I've been asking folks recently, what is your hope for beer?
My hope for beer is that everyone can enjoy a good beer, and that we make the beer drinking culture even better than it was, and that we can bring the beer to those who never had drunk beer before. It's the most isotonic drink you can have. I think we have to be careful with too much flavor, like hops, like herbs and spices, like fruit, like sourness. It's a drink of moderation. And also we have to be careful with alcohol. So an easy drinking beer for me, good easy drinking beer, is even better than high alcoholic beer because there is a lot of flavor in the alcohol. Okay, that's okay for me, but I'm not always looking for all the alcohol. I'm always looking for balance and having a good beer.
And we hope people find that as well.
Okay.
Rudi, Ghequire. Is that Ghequire?
Yeah.
Help me out one more time, please.
Ghequire.
Ghequire.
Yeah, it's a Flemish name, but in origin it was a French name.
Okay.
And it was coming from Ghequire. And Ghequire would say, and we'll say, uncultivated land. So, but it looks like Shakira, and that's...
Well, we'll have a
She's
singing
good singer,
and dancing competition later on.
But she sings much more better than I do.
Well, but you have the great dance moves, so you're all set. It's,
I hope that I can make better beer than she is singing, but she sings very well, and I love her.
Brewmaster of Rodenbach, one of the world's great breweries. Thank you so much for sitting down and sharing your knowledge with us today.
Thanks for having me.
This wonderful beer as well.
Okay, thanks for having me and give me the chance to explain my vision about beers.
Thank you. You can learn more about Rodenbach and the world's great beers by subscribing to Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine. Check us out online at beerandbrewing.com, where you can also read beer reviews and find great news and insight. If you have questions for us about the podcast, things you'd like to hear, questions you'd like answered by our upcoming guests, shoot me a note. It's John Hall, JOHNHOLL, at beerandbrewing.com, or you can join the conversation on Twitter. And Rudi, thanks again so much. And we'll be back again next week with a brand new episode. Cheers.
Thank you very much.
This podcast is brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine for those that love to make and drink great beer. Learn more online or subscribe at beerandbrewing.com or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew.